Hey everyone, welcome to the Send It Show. This is episode 4. We have Mike and Sean in studio with us, and they're going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about who they are.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I'm the founder of the Armed Citizen Institute, the premier concealed carry training and education program here in Utah.
I'm Sean Flinders. I'm going to be the co-host, co-anchor of Send It Show.
Nice. Yep, Sean's going to be on the show quite often, so go ahead and get used to his ugly face. So today we're going to be talking about the British government's new, run, hide, tell stance.
Yeah.
And Sean's going to read us about what the whole stance is. Apparently it's more than just run, hide, tell. And then this is basically just going to be a rant session, so prepare to enjoy.
Yes. It says, run, hide, tell, you must. It says, run.
You must.
Yeah.
Indeed,
You must do this.
Indubitably.
Can you do it in a British accent, or is that?
No,
I'm
just
Scottish.
roll with it. Yeah, it's not going to work.
Run to a place of safety. This is a better option than to surrender or... God. All right. Can I start that part over?
Whew.
Okay.
This is hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Run, hide, tell. Run to a place of safety. This is a better option than to surrender or negotiate. If there's nowhere to go, then hide. Turn your phone to silent and turn off vibrate. Barricade yourself in if you can. Tell the police by calling 999 when it is safe to do so.
That's great.
So let's go over the first, run. So this is a better option than surrendering or negotiate. So you're going to try and negotiate?
I didn't even know negotiate was an option, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the whole run and hide thing for normal civilians, right? Like run away, get the hell out of there, hide if you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a better option than surrendering. Like surrendering and negotiating should not be an option.
Yeah.
Because what do we know
shouldn't put it
about
in your
most
head.
of the mass shootings or the attacks these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of them are interested in taking hostages. It's not like the 90s where you'd read about all these hostages being taken, and if you played along with their rules, you had like an 80% chance of surviving.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally either going to get away from them, kill them, or they're going to kill you, right? Like, I just think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
But, so, besides the whole, this is a better option than surrendering and negotiating, I think, yeah, run makes sense for most civilians.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to get out of there. Okay, hiding. Turn your phone to silent and turn off vibrate. Barricade yourself in if you can.
Right.
I'm good with that. As long as at some point, I think the onus is on the employer, maybe, or local law enforcement to offer some kind of education as far as what a good hiding spot looks like.
Yeah.
As far as cubicle wall is not going to serve as cover, and I think the three of us recognize the difference between cover and concealment, but many don't.
Right.
And in these attacks, these sensationalist attacks, the point is cause as many casualties as possible to the softest, weakest target. So the target that recognizes good cover, that will most likely run toward the bad guy and not away from it, aren't the targets to begin with.
Right.
So there's a significant delay in that response.
Right, and what's that average response time, you think?
So I think nationally they say 3 minutes for a police response.
Hold on a second. Talon, we got to pause for you to go out because you're going to let a bunch of light in, so go ahead.
Not much light.
No, but it would have been like a different change in shadow.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and just pick it back up.
I was done.
Whoa.
So we ended on. Oh, okay.
It was just so matter of fact.
Right.
I was done.
Yeah, what's the national average?
Right. So,
Okay, so let's just.
That's right.
I just asked you.
Yep.
I'm going to ask you again,
Yeah,
and then we're
so-
going to lead back in. Go ahead.
So the national average response time for law enforcement to arrive on scene is 3 minutes. Now, we can't predict where those police officers are going to be on patrol or standard time at any given moment. So there is some variation there, but I think 3 minutes is a good industry standard for training purposes to plan on. And a lot can happen in those 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Here's one thing, that last attack they had, there were witnesses that say they saw police running from...
Well, and I think it's
that
different
attack,
though
so-
when you look at like U.S. versus U.K. because
Oh,
U.S.
yeah.
they all carry, right? Yeah. U.K. the local police don't carry guns, and I read about that, and what they said was it was the local police just telling everyone you need to run away, right? And
But even the police are running away.
yeah, well, it's because they don't have guns, man. Like,
I know,
how can
but
you not
they're-
arm your police?
Yeah,
But yeah, you can't even count on the police sometimes, and I think that's a good point. You know,
exactly.
even though somebody may be a cop, or even if it's like a soldier, right? They're still a person, and people are going to act
being.
differently when their life is threatened, right? And it's not a matter of if they decide to run away or if they decide to fight. It's literally just a reaction, right? You can't decide when someone's got a gun pointed to you what you're going to do. You just do it because it's instinct, right? And that being the case, yeah, you can't always trust that the police are going to be there. Even if like the closest police are right there, you may not be safe because they may just run away, right? And that being said, you know, the average response time being 3 minutes, it's safe to say, I think, that the person that's responding first is probably one of those people that wants to get into it, right?
Yeah.
Because the dude that doesn't want to get into the gunfight is not going to be the
gonna be the
fastest
first.
guy to the fucking scene. He's going to be like, well, I didn't hear that call.
So
You know what I mean?
So that's the reality, and
Yeah.
you know, in the law enforcement profession, it's seen, you know, within your squad, within your shift, you know who it is that maybe takes the long way, that hot call, you know.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, and I'm speaking in generalities, right?
Yeah.
But just like the term goes, there's always that one person, and it's gender indiscriminated. Sometimes, you know, I've worked at departments where it was male or female. That was the one where you knew that regardless of how close they were not going to be the first one on the scene.
Right.
And that's in a profession where you choose to put yourself in that position.
Right.
So you take it outside of that to the general population.
Right.
And I'm sure that, you know, that number isn't just that one person, it's
Right.
the majority.
So, I think we took that off of hide, right? So you're hiding, and we're assuming that you're hiding, and you're trying to find a spot where you're going to remain hidden long enough for the police to arrive,
Yeah.
right? And then after that is tell, which is call the cops.
Yeah, call the police when it is safe to do so.
When it is safe to do so, which may be after you're dead, right?
Easily, yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I have a problem against with the whole run, hide, tell, is not one single word in there leads to any amount of even thought of self-defense.
Trying to save lives. Or
Right. And
anything
not even just trying to save lives as in others, but like yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
how do you get to a point in society where you get to this point where you're not a single fucking word is about you defending yourself? They have zero personal accountability. So if you die, I guess the saving grace is it wasn't your fault because somebody else should have saved you,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Should have waited for the police.
Right, takes away the individual responsibility. When I first heard tell, my mind said, okay, as you're running to your hiding place to get away, you're telling others as a warning,
Right.
get out of here.
Get the hell outta
There's
here.
something bad
Yeah.
happening, right?
Yeah.
But
Move
no,
to
this
safety.
is
this is
a
get to
different
safety,
tell.
and then when you get to safety, call
Right.
the cops.
Call the cops. But on your way there, if you pass people going in the library, don't worry about it.
Well, you don't want to tell them because you hope that the killer runs into them,
Right, and
so
not
you
you.
can get
It's
away.
like whoever runs
Right.
faster from the grizzly
Right,
bear.
exactly. You don't have to be the fastest. You just can't be the slowest.
I'm just gonna kick Mike in the kneecap,
Right.
and then I get away.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
sad thing, you know, when you really look at the big picture of what they're telling
Yeah.
their citizens to do.
Well, so there's different frames of mind, right? And I actually had a discussion about this today. One of the things I actually love about the U.S. is, yeah, we're a little more crass. I think we're a little more vulgar. We're a little more, I guess, like caveman-ish than most of Europe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've got a lot more guns, and we cling to those guns. But there's a part of being in a society that's a little more violent that I think is actually better. And the reason why I think it's better is because you maintain the posture of self-defense, right? You maintain an attitude of hey, I've got to protect myself because these cops aren't going to get here.
Yeah, you have awareness.
Right, you had awareness. And when you get into a society like in the UK right now, where of course there's people that are like us, but the majority of people have become so soft that they're not even thinking about how they can protect themselves.
Yeah.
Now it's just like the government must protect me. One, that scares the shit out of me because the cop might run away or they might be too far away. And two, you know, and this is an extrapolation and goes far away and we don't need to go off on this tangent, but for me, ultimately, the fear is what happens to a society that can't stand up to its own government, right? What happens to a society where you have lost so much control over your own personal accountability to where you're not even saving yourself, that the only people that are armed and capable of any sort of defense are the government? what happens to that society? And I don't necessarily want to go off on that tangent. You guys can weigh on it a little bit, but I'd rather stay on the run, hide, tell. But that's the end point for me, right? Is you are starting to lean to that tipping point,
relying on the government to do everything for you,
which is just horrible.
I'm not sure that necessarily was Britain's role. I think just like a quick history lesson, if you're interested, is where the local police and why they're still not unarmed, or why they're still unarmed, comes from. So when modern policing back in the 1800s was developed, it was actually developed in Britain. Guy named Sir Robert Francis Peel. Robert Peel, Bobby. Right? So you've heard the term the Bobbies, meaning the local police officers.
Yep.
So that's based on his model of policing, which
Okay.
we adopted. The
Yeah.
U.S. adopted. Ours has continued to progress, where theirs just kind of maintained that tradition of the night watchman.
Right.
So it wasn't a policing thing. It was their job. The Bobby's job was to give warning of the danger. Right. So then they just kept that tradition and just at the higher level, which would be equivalent to state or federal level here, kind of did the enforcement piece and kept the local level, the Bobbies, at that watchman.
Which is exactly what happened.
LifeLock commercials, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a security guard. I'm a security monitor.
Yeah.
Right? So very similar to what the Bobbies do. They have some enforcement as far as infractions and things like that.
Right.
They have the power of arrest. The problem is they don't have the tools,
self-defense,
or the equipment to defend in that case.
And that's exactly what happened. The guys that ran away were the Bobbies, right? They were the guys that, I don't know if they have batons or what, but they don't have, they're the monitors. So they did probably exactly what their role is, right? Don't get killed and make sure you alert everyone else so the rest of the guys with the guns can show up, right? Yeah. But I mean, for the rest of society. So yeah, I mean, that's a good point. If for generations they are being brought up with this as their mindset, then that's a different story. And I mean, of course, the UK is a different country, right? Yeah. They're in a monarchy. Well, it's a constitutional monarchy? I forget exactly the term, but it's not an absolute monarchy. Mm-hmm. But they don't have the constitutional rights that we do. Right. And our constitutional rights, thank God, were written in a way to prevent the government from having absolute control over us. Yeah. And the point that I was trying to make is when you get to the point where the government has all of the guns and the government is solely responsible for your defense, then you're also at the point where at any point in time something can happen where the government can just take complete control, right? And I mean, yeah, that's a faraway thing, but that's ultimately what scares me about losing it. And for me, it's about precedence, right? If you look at like how court systems work, or you look at how I think government works, it's about precedence, right? So you have to do something, and then it has to be accepted, and then once that happens, that can be used as a case or a case study to justify something else in another area of that government or the court, but it's an equal right. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if you've taken away the complete right or the complete responsibility of self-defense and given it to the government, well, now the government has complete control. And they can say, well, you can't defend yourself over here, so you also cannot defend yourself over here, so we have to do this for you. Mm-hmm. And then the more they have to do for you, it's just a slippery slope, right? Which ultimately, when you come back to the U.S., is part of the reason why people are so emphatic about their Second Amendment rights, right? You don't let any slip-up happen, because the minute you do, you're starting to set legal precedents to allow more slip-up, right?
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? And I think with that comes the mentality that we were talking about, right? The mentality of, I will not let you take any of my gun rights. I will not let you take any of my self-defense rights. It's not because I'm a gun nut. It's not because I'm sitting at home polishing them every night. Yeah. It's because I want to be able to have the ability to defend myself when I need to, and I want to never get to the point for me or my kids, my grandkids, or so on and so forth, to lose that ability, right? Yeah. And the minute that we let a slip-up happen, maybe it doesn't happen in our generation, but in a generation from now, they get the next slip up. And eventually we end in that position where everyone's guns are taken away.
I think we just don't want to rely on other people to protect us. That's the freedom I want, is to, if somebody's kicking at my door, I want to handle it myself.
Well, it's that 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, not have to sit there for 3 minutes.
I'd rather be able to defend myself in the first 60 seconds than hope to God that I can hide well enough that they don't find me for 3 minutes. And that's if you're in the average response.
Yeah, and 3 minutes seems pretty short.
Well, it does now, but if you're in the middle of getting your ass kicked, 3 minutes is a hell of a long time. And if you got a gun with a guy with a gun or a knife to your throat. 3 minutes is an eternity. It can be life or death.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I think the whole run, hide, tell is just stupid, man. I mean,
3 minutes of terrorists just slaughtering people is a long time.
Well, and what was it? Was it
do a lot of damage?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was 18 minutes from the time. So the terrorist attack in London happened in a sequence, right? And it started with these 3 guys in a van that they rented, running over people on London Bridge. And then those 3 guys got out, and then they started running around, stabbing and slashing people in a few different restaurants. Mm-hmm. And the news story was that it was over in 18 minutes, and thank God for the police that they killed these guys in 18 minutes, right? 18 fucking minutes
Stabbing
they were
people.
killing people.
Yeah.
18 minutes. That's over halfway to half an hour. Like, you are 18 minutes of killing people. Yeah. And, like, don't get me wrong, I think, the police showing up and immediately neutralizing the threat is a great thing. Mm-hmm. But 18 minutes to get this threat stopped? Yeah. Like, how is that acceptable and how is that praised?
And you never know. Those 2 police could have, stepped in and done something and stopped that within the first 45 seconds.
Well, did you hear about the whole I Am Millwall?
Yeah.
That dude? So this soccer fanatic who's a fan of, I guess Millwall has a soccer team, he actually stood up to all 3 of them and fought them. And they slashed the shit out of him. I mean, there's pictures of this guy in the hospital. But he did it screaming, F you, I am Millwall, right? Wow. So the cops run away, and this soccer hooligan is like, fuck that you guys. Right. I'm going to do this. And that's that mentality thing we were talking about, right? But had you had someone like Millwall, or whatever this guy's name is, who had a gun, it'd be a different story. And I mean,
very different. Or if he had any kind of weapon at all.
Or a knife.
A knife, yeah.
But the reality, too, is he occupied their time on him.
He slowed him up.
Right? To prevent that many more casualties, too.
Well, and that's what they're praising him for,
Right. And, I've never been involved in European soccer hooligan street fights, but from what I understand,
it looks
they're
fun.
pretty wild.
It looks fun, yeah.
And I just, I'm glad that there was at least this one example, and I don't know if there's any more. I wasn't there, but it's a positive example to show that within the population, there's always going to be that warrior spirit, so to speak.
Well, there's the gun rights advocates, in UK, whatever small amount they have actually started to call for, like, hey, we need to be able to defend ourselves now. Like, they've had, what was it? 3 attacks this year so far. Mm-hmm. They've had 5 more attempts that have been stopped. Yeah. And the advocates are now saying, like, hey, it's time we have the ability to defend ourselves. Yeah. And I think there's a difference, right? I'm all for gun rights, obviously. But in a country like the UK where they haven't had gun rights for so long, the one thing that stopped the London attack from being like a 40 casualty situation versus what it is now is the fact that guns are not readily available. Mm-hmm. So the terrorists, and this is evident by their attacks over there, had to resort to running people over with a van and stabbing people, right? Yeah. Now, in the U.S., we're in a different scenario because we already have guns everywhere. So the bad guys are going to have guns, so you need to have one to defend yourself, right? Yeah. In the U.K., that's a different story. If you start introducing guns, that may be a different
It's going to open a black market.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to. Of course, you should have the right to defend yourself. I'm just saying that attacks in the future could be more lethal. And that's something that has to be accounted for, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess the point here is I'm not just an absolute gun fanatic, and I'm not obviously an anti-gun fanatic, but we've got to make logical decisions, right? Yeah. But I think that the end result is that mentality. You've got your warriors, right? And I think you've hit on that in a couple topics or a couple discussions that we've had, and I don't know if you maybe want to touch on that a little bit more with what you'll train people with your company. Because I know that's been a thing that you've emphasized in the past when you do your classes. So maybe you want to hit on that a little bit because I think it's a good point to have.
Well, I refer to it as this mindset, right? Mm-hmm. It's mindset. So we have, I'm obviously a supporter of Second Amendment. I'm a supporter of the right people carrying concealed firearms, right? So as long as you do it legally and you've taken the right precautions. And then beyond that, you have the right training. So if you make that decision I'm going to carry this pistol with me when I go out in the public, what you're doing is you're making the decision that I am going to protect myself and those around me. Well, that's a bold statement to make, and I think that a lot of armed citizens that come through, they take their non-shooting required legal course to apply for the permit, which is just talks about when you can apply force based on a state statute in your state. But then there's no follow-up training as far as what that looks like. The mentality of when you strap a pistol under your belt or ankle or wherever you're carrying it and you go walk outside, are you prepared for what follows?
Right.
That? Are you prepared to be in that position? And that takes training. Like our military trains on that.
Right.
Our first responders train for that because it's that mindset. And the armed citizen mindset, I think, is not there. The guns are there, though. And what I'm trying to change is obviously that so that we're not a danger to ourselves.
Right.
Right. So we go in a situation, you have all these concealed carries, which I love, but if there's the mindset's not there, and the training's not there, you know, I'll admit and I'll say that there's an opportunity for that to become more dangerous.
Yeah, it can be a bad situation.
Right.
Well, naturally,
For
I mean,
sure.
if someone gets into a fight and you're a concealed carrier, and if you're not willing to use that force, you've now escalated the situation.
Right.
I think that's a good point to be made. If you're not, and everyone's got to do a bit of like self-reflection here, right? If you are not physically capable of pulling the trigger and killing someone to defend yourself, you should not conceal carry. Right. Yeah. It's not something that you use to say, hey, I'm going to just scare the fuck out of someone because I have this gun.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the truth is, if you get into a situation where you need to use it and you don't, you have now escalated it and you've increased your chance of not only you being killed, but other people being killed because of you, right?
So I say, if I'm teaching a law enforcement class, right? So to junior police officers, my question is, hey, how many guns are
Junior to you.
Junior to me.
Because you're a senior
Right.
police officer.
Well, no, I mean new to the new to the profession.
Right, yeah.
I say, how many guns do you bring? How many guns are on every scene that you show
Yeah.
up to, right? And the answer should be at least one because you introduced it to
Right.
the scene, right? Because you carried it in.
brought it
Well, the armed citizen does the same thing. So how many guns are in that movie theater with you? At least one. And if
Yeah.
you don't have the mindset and coupled with the training to retain that pistol yourself and use it correctly, all you did was give another weapon to the bad guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Now I can't say, you know, there's a fine line. I'm not going to dabble into the political side of should we over legislate the amount of training that's
Right.
required to carry,
Yeah.
because then we're going back and forth into how much are we encroaching
How many
on
hours?
the Second Amendment.
Right, yeah, and that's, yeah.
So
Yeah, we
it's
wanna
up
stay
to
with
the
that, give you
individual.
More mentality.
Right.
Talk, right, yeah.
You know, so it's up to you. And if you sit through, you know, my 4-hour concealed carry class, what I tell you is this doesn't teach you how to conceal a pistol and use it to defend yourself or others. This teaches you the
Right.
legality of the law saying when you can use this pistol.
How you can avoid it from being put in jail.
It's the when,
Yeah.
not the how. And it's the how that's going to save your life, or that's going to allow you to introduce another firearm
Right.
to the bad guy, to an event
Yeah.
that probably doesn't need it.
When you always hear like having a gun in your house is more dangerous than not having a gun,
Right.
because there's a huge percentage that it's going to be used against you, and I don't know what the percentage.
Well, and then there's
is
the
on that.
accidents and everything too, right?
Yeah.
Kids get access to it because some
Yeah.
idiot just kept a loaded gun in his nightstand without a lock. That kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it does introduce more risk, and I think that comes to the training point, right? It's not just about the
Education.
legality; it's about like, don't be an idiot, right? Don't keep a loaded gun in your house all the time, right? Maybe keep it locked away, especially if you have kids, you know. And I think that's the risk side of things, where people have decided that, you know, on one end we're like, well, that's the risk that needs to be taken, and people need to be personally accountable. And on the other end, they've said, well, that's a risk that's not worth having because no kid needs to die because they accidentally shot themselves, right?
Right.
And it all goes back to the whole mentality, right? And there's
Yeah.
different mentalities, and that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And I just think it's kind of the difference in culture as well. And it's the thing that I like about being American, you know, rather than being a citizen of another country, is I'd rather personally be responsible. And that's probably because I also served in the Army. I mean, I did that because I wanted to be personally responsible, and I wanted to be there, you know, when things happened, and that's part of the reason why I joined. And so, admittedly, that makes me more biased, obviously, to being able to want to defend myself. And there are those people out there that want other people to defend them. And I think individually they're not wrong, right? And the thing I like to do when I talk about debates about either mentality or religion or politics is no one's really wrong or right, right? Everyone has their own use. The liberal person has just as much use in society as the conservative person, because we kind of play a yin and yang approach, right? Where we counteract each other and we hold each other accountable, right? If you only had what's known as a groupthink, everyone on one side, we would just go fucking insane. If all we had was conservatives, there would be so many guns and violence. Yeah. It'd be ridiculous, right? And then if anyone ever got into a struggle or like an argument, people would just start shooting themselves, right? Yeah. If you had so many liberals, that would be equally ridiculous, right? And I think what you're seeing here is, I think in the U.S., and this is ultimately my point, I think in the U.S. we have a good balance. We have a good balance of liberals and conservatives to the point where we've maintained our rights to protect ourselves, where people are challenging it to the point where we don't get crazy, but we have equal legal rights to challenge it, to say we absolutely do have these rights and we maintain them, and that's what I love. Mm-hmm. And in the UK, I feel like they've gone too far. They have gone to the point where not only do the rules say that you cannot carry a gun to defend yourself, but mentally speaking and society speaking, they now don't want the role of defending themselves, right? Yeah. And of course you get the I am Millwall guy, or you get these guys that are the warriors that are going to defend themselves, or the police force, right? But as a society, they have become a society where they don't want that right. And you start to see the I guess the ramifications of that, right? How many terrorist attacks have they had this year? I think it was 3, right? Mm-hmm. How many terrorist attacks have we had in the U.S. this year? At least major ones. I don't know if we've had, I mean, there's chances there are minor ones where it's like 1 or 2 people died and it was like, well, it was a hate crime that was fueled by Islam or fueled by Christianity. Yeah. I don't, let's push those aside. I'm talking like bombing Ariana Grande, or running people over and stabbing them in London. We have had 0. And I think the reason for that is that we have that mentality. And it goes beyond people carrying, right? It also goes into people being so aware of it, and this is what we talked about earlier, the awareness, that they're more aware of it to the point where they can pick up on it and they can report it. Our police force doesn't feel like they've had their hands tied behind their back so they can go do something about it. No. One of these terrorist attacks, or these terrorists in the London attack, had actually been reported to the police twice. Yeah. I don't know if you guys read about that. He'd been reported twice, and the police didn't do anything because they wanted to be politically correct.
And the one guy was in a video, like a movie they made.
Yeah, with the ISIS flag, right?
ISIS flag.
Yeah, that's the same guy.
So, I mean, what more evidence do you need? And they said they've had 850 people travel back to Syria.
That was going to be my next point.
And about 400 and something have came back.
400 and something, not just traveled to Syria, but fought for ISIS.
In wars, yeah. They fought against
They went
Britain.
there to fight for ISIS.
So they fought against, British military. Right. And now they're coming back to that country to live there.
They're just let in.
Yeah,
people are denied entry into the UK for less.
Oh yeah, way
People
less.
are denied entry into the UK for visa issues.
Yeah.
These aren't even criminals. These are people that they don't have the right rights, right? Mm-hmm. Legal rights. But these guys that go and fight for ISIS, 400 of them, and I think that was the number that I heard on the news as well, are just let back in. Yeah. And then I also watched an interview with the mayor of London. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get this out there. The dude's Muslim. Yeah. But one thing I want to point out before we go forward is I do not hate Muslims. I actually, because of my service in the Middle East, I love a lot of Muslims. I've met and I served with a lot of guys that served as our interpreters over there. There are a lot of good Muslims, and I don't ever want to get to the point where we're smashing Islam, because I think it's just like any other religion. You get your crazies and you get the people that use it for peaceful reasons. Yeah. So I hope you guys don't want to go there, because I will absolutely talk against you for that. No. But this guy, I think, has gone to the point where he's trying to defend his religion, and he's taking it defensively, because it goes both ways, right? One, us as non-Muslims need to make sure that we're not just condemning an entire religion, because that's like billions of people, right? And most of them aren't bad. But on the opposite side, they have to accept that this is Islamic extremism, right? Oh, yeah. But anyone, I think, naturally will get defensive of their own people, right? And I think this guy has become defensive. So these 400 people have come back, and in this interview, he admits that like I think 200 and something of them are in London, and they have no fucking clue where these people are.
Yeah.
And
They don't have
so,
the funding to watch that many people.
What the fuck?
What kind of funding do they have?
How many millions of people do they have in London and in the suburbs, and they can't watch 200 and something people? And I think
that are Islamic.
well, and that's the
terrorists, pretty
point.
much.
I think this guy got defensive of his own religion, and he's like, "Well, this needs to be a social justice issue. We cannot watch these guys because they're Muslims." Well, motherfucker, they're actual criminals because they went and fought for ISIS.
Against
it doesn't
your
matter.
military.
Against your military.
Yeah.
Yes, they happen to be the same religion as you, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
We can acknowledge the fact that they are Islamic extremists without condemning Islam, right? And if you can wrap your head around that, then you can get past that. And I think that's the thing that he can't get past.
Yeah.
And that's also part of the societal issue, which leads to the mental issue of we don't want to defend ourselves, and we can't also blame these guys because they're Muslims, right?
Yeah.
And yes,
They've
you can't
got-
blame them because they're Muslims, but you can accept the fact that they're doing it because they believe that it's what Islam wants.
And we think PC is bad here in America. PC is bad there.
Yeah.
Extremely bad.
God.
It's gotten to that point.
I think there's a lot of on miseducation, misrepresentation too, because
Yeah.
there's I've been trying to think of the name here. I know it's Liberation Front, but there's a terrorist organization that operates in Africa that is made up of nothing but Christians that terrorize
yeah.
non-Christians for not being Christian.
Yeah, and they behead them and torture them.
right.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. As a Christian, I say kill those guys.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
I don't care if you see them come in there and say, hey, that dude's a terrorist.
Right.
Well, is that because he's a Christian? No, it's because he does terrorist shit.
It's because he fucking
cutting
why
people's heads off.
he's a
It's
terrorist.
because he tortures people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's what makes him a terrorist, not his religion. It's action makes you a terrorist.
Well, and that gets back to the
true.
social justice part of it,
So-
right? We have, and I think you hit it on the head, right? Yes, in the U.S., I feel like we've had our hands tied behind our backs because of social justice. I feel like luckily we've been fighting back against it because we're fucking Americans and we're fucking awesome. But Europe has not been so lucky. There are those people that are like us that are like, fuck you, I hate him because he's an extremist who happens to be tied to Islam, so yes, I'm going to call him as an Islamic extremist, right?
Yeah.
But they get drowned out by the people who are socialists. Like, well, you can't actually tie him to Islam because the minute he kills people, he's no longer a Muslim, which is just fucking stupid. And Mike, I like the fact that you brought up the Christian extremists in Africa, and the fact that you are a Christian and would say fucking kill these guys.
Right.
I personally, I am not religious, but I recognize extremism in all forms, right? And it's just fucking stupid.
It's easy to recognize.
Well, yeah, and the minute we lose the ability to call it out is just stupid.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I've used as an argument point, and I'm going to say it here, is, people ask, well, why do you have to tie him to Islam, right? Why do you have to tie him to Christianity? Because obviously from the point that they go and they murder people or commit mass murder or torture, they are no longer following the tenets of the religion that they claim to be following, right? The reason it's important is because these people in their own head believe that they're doing that for that religion, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why you have to acknowledge it is how do you deal with these people? Well, one, if they're to the point where you have to kill them, you're going to have to kill them. And at that point, you're right. It doesn't matter what we call them. But for those people who are radicalized, but they're at the point where you can still reason with them, who's going to reason with them?
Right.
Who's going to reason with them? The people that think like them, right? So if an Islamic extremist person is radicalized, but he's to the point where you can still reason with him, only Muslims are going to be able to reason with him.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to hear from Christians, right?
That's not going to happen.
I don't give a fuck about religion, but that dude absolutely does. And the reason why you have to say he's an Islamic extremist is because that's how you deal with him. Members of the Muslim community have to go and talk to these people and stop them. And you actually, I don't know if, this is another point from the London attack. I don't know if you saw where I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. What's the word for the Islamic leaders, the priests?
Oh,
Is it Mul? No, it's not Mul. It's not Shia.
don't know much about
it'll
that.
come to me.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
okay.
forget. But the religious leaders of the Islamic faith in London, the imams, they have actually said that they would not bury any of those attackers using the Muslim traditions.
Yeah, the prayers and everything.
That's exactly what the fuck needs to happen. Those
Yeah.
guys, I wish I could go up and fucking kiss each one of them. Like,
For doing
that
that,
makes
yeah.
me so happy. Because what you're getting is exactly what you said, Mike, which is, I don't care if this dude is Christian or Islam or Muslim or whatever religion, I condemn it uniformly across the board.
Yeah.
And up until this point, I've seen a few things in the U.S. where the Muslim community is condemning it, but for the most part, they don't.
Point on that. CAIR, I'm not
CAIR.
sure what it stands for. CAIR, the
Yeah.
Islamic in the
Oh,
America.
yeah.
It was 1 year ago that the Pulse nightclub shooting happened, and they didn't say anything about it.
Which
Nothing
they
on
should
their
have
website,
condemned.
Nothing about. Yeah, and they should have said something about it. You know, it was a big thing that happened in America, and a 1 year anniversary. You know, they could have said something about it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the thing is, it goes back to my point, which is one, you have to be able to recognize it. You have to accept the fact that these guys believe they are representing your religion or your community. It doesn't even have to be a religion. It can be like people. It can be Americans. Like in Afghanistan, this happened. And I'm going to use an American soldier as an example because I want to make sure that we know that this isn't just an Islamic thing. It absolutely is an everyone thing. But in Afghanistan, while I was in Kandahar from 2010 to 2012, we had one soldier just go off a base and fucking kill a bunch of women and children and civilians and men in their house at night, right?
Yeah.
And we were all very quick to say, this motherfucker, he's going to go to jail and he deserves the death penalty, right? The point being that you have to be able to say, this person doesn't represent us and we stand against him.
Yeah.
And I think your
He's
point with
wrong.
CAIR was, and a lot of the Muslim community, yes, individually I've seen a lot of them say this is wrong and I don't accept it. But as a community out loud, they didn't condemn that, right? And that's the point, is we got to get to the point where they condemn it. But I think we've gone on like a couple of tangents here.
Yeah.
But going back to Run, Hide, Tell, and the whole mentality and societal issues, I think the one thing we can say is it's bigger than Run, Hide, Tell. It's bigger than gun rights. It's bigger than Islamic extremism. It's bigger than any one of these small subjects. This could be an entire week of Send It shows where we talk for 2 hours a day. And you could dive into multiple issues, but the underlying factor being, this is a fundamental issue that ultimately lies with every single person.
Yeah.
And I think that the last point I'd like to make on this, and I hope you guys weigh in on this, is, and I feel like the U.S. is just as guilty as Europeans are, we've gotten to the point where not only do we want to pass off our own responsibilities to the government, for a lot of things like self-protection and stuff like that, we've gotten to the point where none of us feel like we are individually responsible for most things in life, right? The majority of stuff we feel like I want to make a very quick decision and I want it the fuck out of my face and I want to go about watching Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that will not go away until the majority of us spend a lot of time thinking about who we are and what we want to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that, but I think
feel
ultimately
like
all this draws
technology
down
is
to
just
that.
a big part of it. It's just people feel like there's always other stuff to do besides, deal with life issues. You got your phone to play on and stuff to watch and shit to do.
Yeah, it's about convenience, right?
Yeah, it's all about convenience.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
I get to interact with different aspects of the population, to say the different sects
Yeah.
of our community, right? Because our communities are made up different classes of people in different walks of life, and my impression, generally speaking, is someone else will take care of the country.
Right.
I'm worried about my stuff.
Just me,
right
myself,
now.
and I.
Just me, myself, and I. Now, in some cases, hey, I get it. You're worried about putting food on your table and feeding your kids and getting them to school, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is your actions, my actions, your actions affect everyone else around me.
Right.
So just taking a small minute to say, hey, like, is this helpful?
Right.
Or is this not?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that, when it comes to concealed carry, self-evaluation, is me carrying a pistol helpful or
Right.
not helpful?
Right.
And if that's the case, then, you make that decision. But, I think that's where it's at. It's, we're responsible for our own country. It's of the people, by the people, and I'm very
Right.
patriotic about that. And I just feel like we check our citizen obligation off at the ballot box.
Right.
And, hey, I did my vote. I did my part. The rest is up to that person I put up there now.
Right.
And I'm done. And there's nothing. I have no other responsibility.
Right.
To my country. And I think, my own opinion is, as a nation, we're falling away from that
Well,
civil patriotism.
to a certain degree, yes, absolutely, and that's that yin and yang balance, right?
Yeah.
That I was talking about. We as a society have to accept that those guys that don't want that are equally as important as we are.
Right.
I think all three of us and everyone in this room is very much the opposite of that.
No.
And one thing I want to get like just straight across, guys, is you and I, we're all one breed, right? We are guys that are on this side. And yes, we believe that this is who we are and this is what we need to do. And absolutely that's true. But that side is also equally important.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now, I feel like probably because we're on this side's a little more important, meaning not that these people are more important than these people, but that we need more people willing to defend themselves and hold their own liberties than we need people that aren't, right?
Right.
Individually, we're all equally important. I think that's the thing that,
And that's what makes America great in the long run.
yeah, we're all equal, right? And this is what I hate about any argument. I fucking hate when anyone feels that they're more important than somebody else because of their beliefs. I don't give a fuck if you're a conservative or a liberal or somewhere in the middle. Everyone has a very valid opinion and they're all equally important because they bring a different piece to the game, right?
Yeah.
But to Mike's point, I happen to think that more people wanting to defend themselves is more important than people not. And I feel like what happened in the UK and what's happening right now is more people are on the side of not wanting to be personally responsible for self-defense. And ultimately, that's our discussion, right?
And I mean, think if they implemented that into us, like just American citizens, that, hey, run, hide, and tell from these terrorists. What would
I think there'd be a
Most
resounding
people say
fuck
it's like,
you.
fuck off.
Yeah, fuck you, dude.
fucking run and hide?
Well, that's why we have run, hide, fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
have
think
run.
that says a lot, by the way.
That's a big, and that's the point, right? There's a big difference. Yes, we'll run. Yes, we'll hide. And even I'm not going to go look for a fight. If I can get away from a dude and I can prevent everyone from dying,
Yep.
I'm going to run and I'm going to hide. But if that motherfucker comes to me
Shit's the
thinking
fan.
that he's going to kill me,
Yeah.
he's got another thing coming. Better men have tried to kill me than this guy, and he's not going to be the last person that's going to try and kill me. You know what I mean? And that's the mentality difference,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Big.
the thing here is like, and I know this is not a popular view, but accept everyone for who the fuck they are. And just accept that we're all different and it's okay. We all play our own piece in this puzzle, right? Don't shy away from what you believe is true. Don't shy away from your own ability to defend yourself. And definitely don't give up your rights to defend yourself to people that are, at least 3 minutes away, right?
Yeah.
Because then you get to the point where you get to what happened, in like London or, some of the other terrorist attacks that happened in Europe.
Yeah.
But
Even here, there's been success. San Bernardino and
yeah, or Florida. Pulse, yeah.
But
Jesus
yeah.
Christ,
you
Pulse.
know,
And that took the police how long to get in there?
Yeah,
it's
hours.
Yeah, like hours.
Because the dude hold up, like he,
Right.
yeah.
And they're scared of bombs and everything else.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
you don't know, yeah, and you can't. It's just like the military aspect too.
Yeah.
You can't rush into an ass whooping.
Yeah.
You got to do it the way it is, and
Well, I think the military is.
especially
I think the military is a little different because we can go in there and just kill everything.
Right. No,
The
that's
police
yeah.
have to make sure
Right.
that not only when they go in there they don't kill civilians,
Right.
but they also have to make sure that when they go in there it doesn't result in civilian deaths because of him.
because
Right.
of your
Right.
So there's a big difference.
rushing in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Officer induced jeopardy
Yeah.
is what we call it, where the officer puts someone in a position where it's life or death, whether
Yeah.
the civilian or the bad guy,
Or the bad-
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only one. You're standing in the middle of an alley holding your gun at a car, and there's only one way that car can go, and you're standing in it. and you force the guy to drive at you,
Right.
you use
Yeah,
deadly
you're not
force.
giving him a way to get out of there.
Right. You know, which depending on what the crime is, but
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah, there's-
there's that risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
That
the term
makes
they
sense,
use
yeah.
for it, officer-induced jeopardy.
Right.
And these guys are also the worst enemy because they have no fear of dying whatsoever.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
You know,
Right.
That's their ultimate goal,
Yeah.
and that's a tough enemy to
It's,
fight.
it's tough, and I think that's why the mentality, you know, going back to this, the mentality needs to be everyone is equally responsible for self-defense. And I think that, you know, the better defense is that everyone takes personal accountability. We get off our cell phones, we get off of our, hey, what's convenient for me is best, and we say, not only am I going to defend myself, but I'm going to stay equally aware to defend everyone around me. And as a society, we must maintain that.
Right.
And I happen to think that the U.S. is a little more on that side than the other side, and the U.K. happens to be more on the other side, and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
That's why they've had 3 mass terrorist attacks in this year alone, and we have not.
Yeah.
But I think we're actually running up on time here, so I hope you guys enjoyed this rant. I know I ranted quite a bit, and I enjoyed it. Hopefully, we made some good points. If you guys have anything you want to say, go ahead and throw it on any of the social feeds, or you can feel free to email us. The contact info is on the website. If we get some comments, I think we can definitely follow up with a second episode.
Yeah.
I think there's easily enough content to take up a whole month of episodes.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. If you're still here listening to us, I hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next week on Send It.
Well, that was a bloody good show, eh?
That would have been that Scottish accent would have been perfect
Should've done
for the
it.
British.